Be sure to follow me on Instagram. There you can hang out with me and talk to me directly. Okay, so we are getting back into Batman Superman. We're getting back into Batman Superman. In the last video, we basically ended that on Superman busting into the prison beneath the Hall of Justice where the Batman Who Laughs is being held, and then in turn breaking him out, right? And so the big question, this is kind of the question that we ended this on, is it Superman full on infected, or is it Superman working on behalf of Batman? And the circumstances lent themselves to the idea that Superman was working with Batman, and this was all just one great big ruse. And that's really what it turns out to be, right? It really just turns out to be a circumstance where Superman infected himself with the Joker toxin in order to go underground, or I guess in order to infiltrate and to trick the Batman Who Laughs into believing that he has successfully been infected. And so basically this prison break, or at least, breaking him out of this facility, is one of the worst case scenarios in a lot of ways, because what it means is the Batman Who Laughs is on the loose again. But the other half of this, and the reason why this is so interesting, is because it's Superman playing a dangerous game. Now, it's one of these things where Superman's kind of okay, so we couldn't get the plan from Billy Batson, what's this plan? What's the scheme that you have? And the way the Batman Who Laughs does this is kind of hilarious, right? Because I was reading through this and I was like, well, this is one of the most grandiose schemes in the history of everything, right? It's kind of an insane scheme, but at the same time, it sounds like it'd be nothing the Batman Who Laughs would do. Because what he says here is my scheme, my grand plan here is to infect all the superheroes of your world, and then infect everybody in your multiverse, and then destroy your multiverse. And it's just kind of really? That's your grand scheme? That's your grand plan, is to wipe everything out of existence? And he actually ends up going as far as to taunt Superman and be you know how your mom felt when your world exploded? Well, that's how you're gonna feel. It's almost like he's toying with the Man of Steel. And the reason why is because as soon as Superman basically reveals the fact that he's not fully turned, right? He lets his temper get the better of him and starts tearing into the Batman Who Laughs. Ultimately, Batman jumps in with kryptonite and stops Superman. And that's when you find out they never broke out, right? They never broke out of the facility. They've been in there the entire time. That Superman just walked in there. And so this perception that the Batman Who Laughs had been broken out, this belief that he was on the loose again, that none of it was real. But here's the funny thing about this, is the Batman Who Laughs knew. It's kind of this revelation of hey, he knows what's going on, right? That's why he's taunting you, that's why he's toying with you, that's why he's using you, is because he knows that all this is a ruse. He knows that all this is a trick. And so he leaves them one last clue. When they ask him who are the secret six that you infected, as if it's going to do anything, as if it's going to help at all, as if it's going to help with anything. They end up asking him who are the secret six that you infected? And the Batman Who Laughs is I'm not going to tell you guys who it is. I'm not going to reveal all the names. I'll just tell you I wouldn't shine their name in the sky with a light, and right off the bat, Batman immediately figures out who this person is, right? So drop Superman in this giant facility where it'll basically bombard him with solar radiation, and it'll help to essentially, get rid of the Joker toxin. Now, here's the thing about that, right? The more I say that, the more I think about it this way. Here's the thing about that. If Superman was infected with the toxin of the Joker from the DC universe, right? Not even Batman Who Laughs, but the main DC universe, and he was cured of it, it would stand to reason the following: that Batman would use his intellect to figure out how to adopt a faster cure, to find a way to basically cleanse the Joker toxin from Superman as fast as possible. Plus, yellow sunlight, Now, I guess the only other alternative besides that is to just put Superman in a capsule and shoot him into the sun. The problem is, he kind of needs them. And so basically racing over to Gotham City, this is one of the things I like about this, because Williamson does not ignore some of the stuff that happened in the Batman Who Laughs, right? That's one of the things that you guys will see when it comes to different crossovers. Those of you guys who are new to comics, and people who have been around in comics for a long time will tell you this is true, and it is the bane of almost any comic book fan's existence, right? It's the one thing we hate the most. It's the one thing that people are pissed off about with Brian Michael Bendis, which rightfully so, because Bendis is writing Superman, that basically ignored everything that was done, in Action Comics and Superman before him, which kind of sucks because it was some amazing storytelling. Fans were pissed, but still, it's one of those things where writers will come along and they'll ignore the work before them. They'll ignore the previous work, and then fans will kind of feel like they're left hanging, right? Because they're part of this cohesive story, and then suddenly it just gets cut off. It pisses us off to no end, to be honest. is really what it is. But this basically picks up after the events, or at least it really ties into the conclusion of the Batman Who Laughs, because what we saw at the end of that story is that the person who was infected was Commissioner Gordon, and that Commissioner Gordon was in fact the first person in the main DC universe to be infected by the Batman Who Laughs, right? Like, I mean, I guess aside from Batman himself, you know, following that, like Commissioner Gordon was the first one to be infected, and he's been infected the entire time. And you end up learning the whole thing was a ruse, right? When he was like, Batman, Superman, come help, some kid's been kidnapped, and you know, we need to track him down. That none of that was real, that it was all basically just like this big scheme. That was part of the big scheme that was thought of by the Batman Who Laughs in order to put Batman and Superman, 1, to work together, 2, to get them to isolate themselves, and 3, like, to basically infect Billy Batson. And so it's solid insofar as Commissioner Gordon is probably a person that you wouldn't expect. Now, the big question to ask here is, why was Commissioner Gordon infected? Like, of all the people to infect, why Commissioner Gordon? Because what can he do, right? I mean, he can, like what can Commissioner Gordon do in this scenario that could really change the game, right? That could really put things in a circumstance where it would somehow like change the landscape, right? Like, why Commissioner Gordon? Because he's basically just a guy who's a cop. The cool thing about this comes in the form of Superman, who basically says the Batman Who Laughs just wanted to prove he could infect your closest friend, that he could get to the people closest to you. But here's kind of the issue with that. Like, here's the issue that I have with that. And I don't mean for this to turn into like a great big huge criticism of the Batman and Superman, but by no means. Like, I love this story to death. But here's one of the things that kind of strikes me as strange about that is that was basically already established, that like the Batman Who Laughs can hit you closest to home, right? That was the whole idea behind the entire Batman Who Laughs miniseries. Like, there's no safe place, right? Like, if he wants to come for you or the people you care about, he will, right? So that's already established. It may just be one of those things where Williamson is kind of establishing that for people who never read the Batman Who Laughs miniseries, which I don't know why you wouldn't. It's an amazing miniseries, but like anybody who didn't read that, kind of bringing that in. But what it does do is it basically says that like the individuals who are being infected by the Batman Who Laughs, it's being done for a strategic purpose, right? So I don't think it's simply just because of the fact that it's Commissioner Gordon and he's a really good friend of Batman. I think there's other reasons behind this. I think there's a bigger motivation behind this in terms of why Commissioner Gordon was infected here. Now, here's the other cool thing that kind of comes out of this is you end up having like one of these mech suits that comes descending down onto Batman and Superman. Superman uses his frost breath and freezes it. Now, somebody here correct me if I'm wrong, and I may very well be, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong. We haven't seen Superman use his frost breath for quite some time, right? I wouldn't go as far as to make the statement and say that like he hasn't done it like in the entirety of New 52 or DC Rebirth. I'm not going to make that statement. I mean, honestly, I can't remember that far back, but I feel like we haven't seen him do it over the course of Rebirth. I mean, it's kind of cool to see, to be honest with you guys. Like, it's cool to see him use his frost breath. I don't know, maybe he used it recently. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember him using it during Bendis' Unity Saga. I don't remember seeing him do it before Bendis took over on Batman or Superman. I don't remember seeing him do that. Like, I don't recall that. It's just kind of a cool little small thing to see. Jim Gordon's taken out pretty quickly, right? He's taken out quite swiftly. And that was the expectation, because what this does is it forces Batman to think differently. You know, his response here is, okay, if the Batman Who Laughs thinks like me, then it's time for me to stop thinking like me. And it's time for me to stop thinking like him, right? Because it creates a circular pattern. If Batman sits down and says, okay, so the Batman Who Laughs is basically me, I'm going to think like him, which is thinking like me, which is thinking like him, it creates a circular pattern where he never gets out of it. So it's like, let's nip that in the bud. Let's think like what Superman would do. What would the Superman do here? Like what would he do in this circumstance? And it's really kind of cool to see, because what it is it's Batman basically deferring to Superman's logic. It's Batman deferring to him and saying, okay, like one, we're going to take Commissioner Gordon to the Fortress of Solitude where nobody else can get in here, right? Where everything else will be fine. And then like, we'll go with what Superman would do here, because it's the Batman Who Laughs, not the Superman Who Laughs, right? So it's kind of a cool thing. The problem with this is that Commissioner Gordon was a Trojan horse. That's exactly what Commissioner Gordon was. Commissioner Gordon was designed to, was basically, that's the reason why he's here, is because he knew that Batman wouldn't kill him, right? The Batman Who Laughs knew that Bruce Wayne would not kill Commissioner Gordon. He's going to take Commissioner Gordon to a place where he believes the Batman Who Laughs can't get to him, which would be the Fortress of Solitude, right? Because the only people who can get in there are people who are explicitly given access by Superman, right? You can't just have any swinging dick walking up to the Fortress of Solitude and just being like, open sesame, and then like it opens up and they walk in. Otherwise, what would be the purpose of calling it a fortress? It'd just be like, a giant place in solitude is what it would be called. Like, a relatively well hidden location in solitude. That'd kind of be what you would have to call it. The idea here is that with that being the case, with the Batman Who Laughs knowing that and knowing Bruce would make that move, that leads to him bringing Commissioner Gordon to the Fortress of Solitude, which in turn basically brings out Jaime Reyes. Now, here's the thing. All right, here's the interesting thing about this. I feel like Jaime Reyes fans are probably going to like hit the roof and be insanely happy, and rightfully so, right? Because here's the thing about Jaime Reyes. Jaime Reyes, I think, was really, really cool after Infinite Crisis, basically when he popped up, you know, when he became like the new Blue Beetle. He was really cool as part of that whole story. The issue with Jaime Reyes is I feel like in recent years, he's kind of just gotten the rebuff, right? It's just kind of like, he's a guy who's there. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace. Like that's basically it. When it comes to Jaime Reyes, like you don't really get much with him. You know, like DC hasn't really pushed him all that hard. And the cool thing about this is that having him being brought in as a person who's infected by the Batman Who Laughs, what it does is it's really kind of Williamson's way of saying, hey, look guys, you guys have been sleeping on Jaime Reyes. Like that's really what's been going on here, right? And in reality, people are. Like people don't really understand how powerful Jaime Reyes can be. I mean, post Infinite Crisis, there were multiple circumstances where it was kind of like, hey, look, if this guy pushed his powers to the limit, right? Like if him and the Scarab push the powers to the limit and basically take all this tech and all this energy that makes up what it is that Blue Beetle can do, and then like push it to its absolute peak, the guy would be an absolute powerhouse in DC Comics. And there are times that he has been, but the fact remains that at the moment right now, like because of the nature of the Blue Beetle suit, because it's basically a high-tech suit that's used by Jaime Reyes by virtue of the Scarab that's grafted to his back, he can infiltrate virtually anything. And being able to like putting him in a circumstance where he basically becomes this kind of, you know, where Commissioner Gordon acts as a Trojan horse, which allows Jaime Reyes to basically like infiltrate the tech systems of the Fortress of Solitude and then take them all over to essentially take over Kryptonian technology, makes him like this hugely dangerous foe. Because now it's basically like Jaime Reyes amped up with like Kryptonian technology that has to face off against Batman versus Superman, and the guy's totally insane at the same time. That's kind of the crazy thing, because what this does, this is one of the crazy things about this, is that what this does, looking at the depiction of the suit as it shows up at the end of this, it doesn't really look like it's Jaime Reyes in control. The reason why I say that is in DC Comics, one of the things that they established is that the Scarab can actually seize control and totally take over absent Jaime Reyes' influence, right? So it almost becomes this kind of Bruce Banner Incredible Hulk thing, right? You know, where like the Incredible Hulk takes over and Bruce Banner can't really stop him. It's similar to that, not identical, but it's something akin to that. But the Scarab basically takes over and becomes like, it literally grows in size, it becomes bigger, it gets like these spikes and all this crazy stuff looking on his back. That's kind of how it looks at the moment, you know? Now, again, this is probably one of those circumstances where this form is achieved by the two of them working in tandem because they've both been infected, right? I mean, infected with a Joker toxin because of the fact that the Scarab is grafted to the spine of Jaime Reyes. You infect one, you infect the other, right? You can't really get away with only infecting one of them and then the other one's just kind of there. As a result of that, Batman and Superman are taken out quick, fast, and in a hurry. But being able to infiltrate Kryptonian technology in turn allows Jaime Reyes to infiltrate the rest of the world's technology, right? To infiltrate the Hall of Heroes and all that kind of stuff. And this is one of the cool things that goes on here, is because what this does is it ties into villains of the year. It ties into Scott Snyder's Justice League, because for those of you guys who are watching Scott Snyder's Justice League, you have Lex Luthor, who's basically the apex predator now, like this. You could call him a human if you want to, the way that he was originally created when the multiverse was first formed, before it was wiped away and then replaced with everything we've basically been seeing since, like, you know, the formation of DC Comics in the modern era. As a result of that, like he's basically like a Martian Manhunter and a human being merged into one, is really what it is, right? That's how people originally were. But he's also leading as Legion of Doom, and the Legion of Doom is one of these things where it's kind of like trying to seize control, like ensure the survival of Perpetua. And so what this means, what this shows, is that the Batman Who Laughs is on a collision course with Lex Luthor's forces. Here's the question I have: is the enemy of my enemy my friend? That's my question that I'm asking here, is because if that's the case, then what I would love to see come out of this is, even if it's only for a temporary alliance, right? Like Batman, Superman, the Batman Who Laughs, and the Secret Six working together against the forces of Lex Luthor. That would be legit. Like that would be baller. Because dude, imagine, like, here's the thing. Imagine what would happen if the Batman and the Batman Who Laughs teamed up with each other. Like, imagine what that would look like. Like, nobody would stand a chance. It'd be like Super Batman, basically. It'd be Super Batman just wreaking havoc on whoever he fights. It'd be pretty cool. It'd be pretty solid. But nonetheless, with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.